In today's episode, we take a deep dive in the true crime case of Heidi Firkus. Rest in peace, Heidi. Taken from this world way too soon. On Sunday, April 25th, 2010, at 6:31 in the morning, 911 dispatch received two hang-up calls from a cell phone registered to 25-year-old Heidi Firkus. At 6:32 a.m., Heidi Firkus called 911 and spoke with the 911 operator. In this call, Heidi said that someone was trying to break into her house, which was located at the 1700 block of Minnehaha Avenue West in St. Paul, Minnesota. 38 seconds into the call, as Heidi was given dispatch her address, a noise similar to a gunshot was heard. Heidi stopped speaking and the call went dead. Before the gunshot, there is no significant background noise on the call, nor does Heidi say anything that would suggest that an intruder had actually entered the home. 911 dispatch twice tried to call Heidi's phone back, but the calls went to voicemail. A little over a minute later, at 6:33 a.m., Nicholas Firkus, her husband, called 911 using Heidi's phone. He was highly emotional on the call. He said that someone had broken into their home and that he and Heidi had been shot while trying to run out the back to the garage. Near the end of the almost 7-minute call, police can be heard entering the house. When police entered, they noted that the front door was open approximately 1 inch and there was a smell of gunpowder in the air. Heidi Firkus was lying on her back in the kitchen with her feet less than 15 feet towards the front door. There was blood on Heidi's hair and face, and she was unresponsive. Her husband, Nicholas Firkus, was next to her on the phone with the 911 operator. He was highly emotional, and he had an apparent gunshot wound to his upper left leg. There was a shotgun on the floor near the front door, and there was damage to the bottom part of the interior of the door from shotgun pellets. Her husband was taken to an ambulance for medical care outside of the home. Heidi, unfortunately, was pronounced dead at the scene of the crime. Initially, before he was transported to the hospital, Nicholas told police while he was at the scene that one or possibly two people broke into his house. He said that he got his shotgun and that he and his wife were trying to run out the back door to the detached garage to escape. He said that as they were running to the garage, he turned around and the suspect was able to take the shotgun from him and shoot him and his wife. When asked whether the suspect was black or white, Nicholas Firkus said that he didn't know. He said that the suspect was wearing a hood. When a sketch artist created a composite of the said intruder, they found it looked very similar to a known St. Paul burglar at that time, thanks to a tip that they had received. At the scene, the front door was equipped with both a deadbolt lock and a lower lock. There were tool marks in the door jamb by the lower lock, but none by the deadbolt. There was a pair of jeans between the shotgun and the kitchen. There was also a table just inside the door. This table contained several items, including a beer bottle, a water bottle, and a receipt. None of those items appeared to be disturbed. Medics transported Nicholas Firkus to the hospital where he was treated for the gunshot wound. The wound was a through and through gunshot wound to his upper left thigh, and there was no evidence of any significant bleeding or injury other than local soft tissue injury. Medical records noted that he was hysterical throughout the exam and crying loudly. He was treated at Regents Hospital and released after about 3 hours. But while he was at the hospital, Nicholas was interviewed by police. He said that he got up to get a glass of water from the bathroom and that he heard someone fiddling at the front door. He said that he woke up Heidi and told her to call the police and that he grabbed his shotgun out of the closet. He said that they called the police from the closet and that they then decided to run to the garage. He said that when they got to the bottom of the stairs, the door opened. He got grabbed and then Heidi was shot. He said that he recalled yelling at Heidi to give dispatch their address. He described the intruder as a guy in a hooded sweatshirt, pulled low, maybe wearing sunglasses, maybe black and wearing gloves. He said that he never saw a tool in this person's hand. He also said that he tried to push this person away, that he started to stumble, and that is when the gun went off and Heidi fell down. After he was released from the hospital, he was then interviewed again at the police station. And so he reviewed the events of the previous day while he was there, and he said that the night before the shooting, he and Heidi watched a movie and that they each had a glass of wine. He said that he went to bed around midnight and that he woke up 10 or 15 minutes after 6 a.m. and he heard the screen door open and fiddling with the doorknob. When he was asked whether he had set the deadbolt, he said that he and Heidi are usually pretty religious about locking the deadbolt, but that he thought that he forgot to lock the deadbolt that night. He said that he grabbed his shotgun out of the upstairs closet. He also said that he brought this shotgun up from the basement about a month earlier because the moisture in the basement was causing the gun to rust, and that's what made him put it upstairs in the closet. He said the shotgun was unloaded and that he loaded the shotgun when he heard the noises with the door downstairs. He told the detectives that he woke Heidi up and told her to try to leave the house and head for the garage where their cars are parked. He said that this was a safety plan that he and Heidi had decided upon previously if they ever had trouble. He told the detectives that he is right-handed and that he grabbed his jeans in his right hand and was carrying the shotgun in his left hand, and that he was walking behind Heidi to try to move her along. He says that Heidi stopped next to the front door to grab her wallet, which was on the table next to the front door. And at that moment, the door opened and there was a black guy around 6'1" or 6'2" with a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood drawn tight around his face. He then drops his jeans. The guy grabs the barrel of the shotgun. They wrestle, and that his fingers slipped onto the trigger and it went off. He said that the gunshot hit Heidi and that she went straight down. He said that he and the suspect struggled over the shotgun and that the gun went off a second time, hitting his leg, and that's when he fell down, and that's when the guy took off through the front door. He says he then goes over to Heidi and rolled her over and that she was limp. At this time, Nicholas Firkus tells police that they were being foreclosed on and that they were gonna tell their parents and friends that day and were also planning to move later that day. He also said that he and Heidi were behind on their bills, that their house had been foreclosed on, and that they had to be out of the house the next day. He also shares they hadn't told any of their friends or family about the foreclosure or their need to be out of their house. He said that they had planned to pack up their house on Sunday and Monday morning, put some of their belongings in the garage to get later, and find someone to stay with. He also said that there had been fraud on their bank account. He tells them Heidi went shopping at the Mall of America the day before she was killed, but that she was on a tight budget and that he gave her a $30 to $40 in cash to spend budget. An autopsy revealed that Heidi Firkus received one shotgun wound to the back and that there was no exit wound. The wound tract went from back to front and from right to left of her body. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was a shotgun wound to the back and that the manner of death was homicide. Nicholas Firkus and Heidi Firkus, they purchased their home in August 2007 for $215,000 using 2 mortgages. The monthly payment on the primary mortgage was about $1,300 and the monthly payment on the second mortgage was about $250 a month. The last time they made any payment on either mortgage was September 22, 2008. On April 30th, 2009, Nicholas was personally served with foreclosure documents, and on June 4th, 2009, the house was sold at a sheriff's auction. A little over 6 months later, on January 29, 2010, a representative from the law firm handling the foreclosure contacted Nicholas Firkus by telephone and offered him $4,000 in cash if they vacated the house by February 18, 2010, or $2,500 in cash if they vacate by March 20th, 2010. Nicholas never accepted either of those offers. Eviction proceedings were filed on February 12, 2010, and then an eviction hearing was held on March 8, 2010. Nicholas, he attended this hearing alone. Heidi was not present. Police located the foreclosure documents inside of Nicholas's vehicle. Nicholas, he signed an agreement to vacate the house by March 22nd, 2010. When the Firkuses had not vacated by that date, the law firm sent Nicholas a letter setting a lockout date of April 9th, 2010. On April 6th, Nicholas, he contacted the law firm and he said that his grandmother was in hospice, that her death was imminent, and that he needed a couple extra weeks to vacate the house. The law firm, they agreed to help and reschedule the lockout for noon on Monday, April 26, 2010. There is no evidence that either of Nicholas' grandmothers were in hospice or died in 2010. Both of them lived through the entire calendar year of 2010. Not only to the foreclosed home, the Firkus' U.S. bank account was overdrawn by $434.93, and they were closed by the bank on January 8th, 2010, and the Firkuses also owed U.S. Bank $1,736 at the time of Heidi's death. In addition to that, the Firkuses owed REI credit card over $17,000. And a review of credit card charges from 2008 to 2009, it showed that Nicholas Firkus made 2.4 times more charges to the credit cards than Heidi did. And investigators, they spoke to Heidi and Nicholas's insurance agent, who is also a longtime friend of Heidi's parents. The agent said that Heidi's car insurance policy was always promptly paid up to the date that she married Nicholas Firkus. The insurance agent also said that after her marriage, he communicated with Nicholas Firkus regarding all insurance matters, including renter's vehicle and homeowner's insurance. The agent said that the insurance company, they canceled the Firkus' homeowner's insurance policy when the foreclosure occurred, and that he sent Nicholas Firkus a cancellation notice. The agent said that he also spoke to Mr. Firkus on the phone about the cancellation, and that he told him that the foreclosure occurred because a teller at the bank was stealing his paychecks. The agent said that he didn't believe this story, and that he explained to Nicholas that foreclosure involves a long process. The insurance agent also said that he didn't press Nicholas about any of this information about the foreclosure and stuff because he assumed that Nicholas was embarrassed about it all. The agent said that he also received a cancellation notice for the insurance on Heidi and Nicholas Firkus' vehicles, but that he merely sent a letter and never followed up with a conversation and assumed that the couple had switched insurance agents. On February 12, 2010, the same day that the eviction proceedings were filed against them, Heidi and Nicholas, they left for a 5-day trip to Hawaii. They spent over $3,500 on the trip. One of those trips, worth $752, was paid for by Nicholas's father. On March 10th of that same year, Heidi and Nicholas, they visited the Calhoun Beach Club and they toured 2 apartments with monthly rents of $1,454 and $2,200. The agent from that club, she recalled talking to Heidi about her desire to sell her house and move into the city. By this time, the Firkus' house had already been foreclosed on and sold at the auction, so they had no house to sell, which leaves us to believe that Heidi was in the dark about a lot of what was going on. In emails from March and April 2010, Heidi repeatedly asked Nicholas to handle and respond to creditor phone calls that she was receiving. Nicholas would respond to Heidi by assuring Heidi that he was taking care of all of it and telling her that he was in contact with US Bank regarding an audit involving some fraud with their account. Nicholas assures Heidi that their credit scores were good. There was no evidence that US Bank conducted any such audit or that there was any fraud related to the Firkus' account. A lot of evidence is showing that Heidi didn't know about the foreclosure or this lockout that was coming up upon them. Investigators, they reviewed the text messages and emails that was sent to and from Heidi and Nicholas' cell phones and email accounts. There is not a single message that references foreclosure or eviction proceedings or gives any indication that they would need to move out of their house imminently. On the contrary, on March 11, 2010, Heidi sent an email to a friend saying, "Wish we weren't tied down to our house so we could move somewhere fun." The law firm that was handling the foreclosure and eviction has no documentation that was signed by Heidi, and their representatives never had any contact with Heidi. All of their contacts were directly with Nicholas Firkus. Investigators, they spoke with Heidi's family, friends, co-workers, and not a single person said that Heidi ever said anything about foreclosure, eviction, or needing a place to stay or store their belongings. And photographs and a video taken inside the Firkus home after Heidi's death show that despite having to be out of the house the next day, absolutely no packing had been done. Also, Heidi, she was scheduled to work on Monday, April 26. She did not request the day off. If they had to move, you would think she would be requesting the day off. On Thursday, April 22nd, 2010, Heidi exchanged text messages with a friend making plans to get a pedicure in the afternoon on Sunday, April 25th. In this exchange, Heidi was given the option of doing the pedicure on Sunday or the following Wednesday, and Heidi chose Sunday. Again, if there was a lot going on, she would have too much going on if they're having to leave and get everything packed. Heidi also suggested that they all go to church together that Sunday morning. In April 2010, Heidi emailed Nicholas multiple times regarding scheduling a meeting with JS, who was the realtor that helped them buy their house and also a friend from church. So they knew JS very well. I only have the initials as JS. I don't really know what that means. And, you know, this is about Heidi, and this story needs to get out there, not about JS. But JS is the realtor who helped them buy their house, and someone who knew them as and considered them friends from church. Now, Nicholas, he responded by saying that he had been in contact with JS. And on April 23rd, Heidi sent Nicholas Firkus an email asking whether he had heard from JS. And Nicholas responds, JS said that he's ready to meet when we are. I told him Monday should be good. Police interviewed JS, who said that he had not spoken to Nicholas in over a year and that there was no meeting scheduled for Monday. Now Heidi, she did go shopping at the Mall of America with a friend on Saturday, April 24th, and receipts show that she spent $218.46. The friend told investigators that Heidi did not appear upset or nervous about any finances. She was looking for a dress for a friend's wedding in the fall, which she had a best friend who was getting married very soon. And I'll share with you a little about that at the end. Investigators, they tested swabs from the gun for DNA, but found no unidentified DNA profiles. And DNA swabs from the entry door contained insufficient genetic information. Given where Heidi was shot, the trajectory of that shot, if extended back to just inside the front door, would require the shotgun to be near the table inside the door. And if this incident happened as Nicholas had described, the intruder would have been between the shotgun and the table. This would have put the intruder very near and probably in contact with the table. Remember, nothing was knocked over or even looked disturbed in this table that was on the inside of the door. Furthermore, no struggle was heard in Heidi's 911 call, nor does Heidi say anything that suggests that an intruder had successfully gained entry into the house. Yet, one can hear police arrive in the background of Nicholas Firkus' 911 call. On Friday, April 23rd, 2010, Heidi forwarded Nicholas an email from a friend regarding plans for Heidi and Nicholas to get together with a group of friends that night at Osaka's restaurant. Nicholas responded, "Oh, I'm okay with that as long as I can have you to myself tomorrow night." 11 years later, her husband would be arrested for the murder of his wife after he told police an intruder broke into their home, grabbed his shotgun, and shot her dead during a struggle. Nicholas James Firkus was accused of fatally shooting his wife, Heidi Firkus, in their Minnesota home in 2010, according to that criminal complaint. After years of tenacious work by investigators and our law enforcement partners, we are one step closer to getting justice for Heidi and the truth for everyone who loved her, especially her mother, father, and brothers. That's what St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell said at that time when he was finally arrested, so that they can get some justice, because they were always wondering, when will this justice come? Even in the obituary, when they made it up, and it's still out there online, part of who was left behind was the loving husband, Nick Firkus. That's what that obituary said. Firkus, 38 years old at the time, he was charged with second-degree intentional murder. Officials, they did not cite a specific break in the case that led them to charge Firkus following this 11 years of investigation. Ramsey County Attorney John Choi said having a fresh set of eyes helped, and some information came from the FBI that he believed helped them to better understand the case. Chief Axtell said, "It doesn't matter how much time passes. In a case like Heidi's, no one in this team or in law enforcement is gonna give up trying to bring justice to victims or to hold those responsible accountable for their actions." Jurors deliberated for 4 hours before finding Nicholas Firkus guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and second-degree intentional murder for the killing of his wife Heidi Firkus at the couple's St. Paul home in 2010. After 13 years, the night before the couple was going to be evicted from their St. Paul, Minnesota home after foreclosure, Nicholas Firkus was convicted in the murder of his wife. Nicholas in court claimed the gun went off during a life or death battle with the burglar, and the gun discharged twice, hitting Heidi Firkus, then himself. Nicholas Firkus told Sergeant Jim Gray of the St. Paul Police Department, "I don't remember exactly what happened, but the gun went off. So my fingers slipped down to the trigger, went off." The Firkus house was clean and tidy, and the entryway table beside the front door was undisturbed. Extensive neighborhood canvassing and a canine search showed no signs of any intruder. Sergeant Jim Gray said he thought he was a black male but was not entirely sure. Nick Firkus, he told Sergeant Gray that the couple was in financial trouble. They were in over $15,000 of credit card debt and losing their home. None of their friends or family knew they were to be evicted the very next day. Investigators found no signs that the couple was packing up for a move. Commander Jake Peterson, who has been in charge of the case since day one, said it did not look like anybody was planning to go on a long vacation, let alone moving out of the house. In a review of correspondence between the couple and financial documents that were found in the home, investigators, they weren't able to find any proof that Heidi knew of this impending eviction. Finally, Sergeant Gray asks Nick Firkus the big question: did you have anything to do with the murder? He says no, absolutely not. Then Nick, he retains the services of a defense attorney, Joe Friedberg, who recommended he cease contact with the St. Paul Police Department. At the advice of his lawyer, Nick, he declines the SPD's request to sit down with a police sketch artist to create a composite of the alleged intruder. His attorney tells ABC News, "I knew they used that as a lever to try interrogating him more. So I said, no, we won't do that, but we'll hire an artist and do it." Nick and Joe Friedberg, his attorney, they return to the St. Paul Police Department with their own sketch of the alleged intruder, who Nick said was a black male in his late 30s and wearing a hoodie. So they release the sketch that they bring in through the media to see if any tips would come in. Years later, a woman identified Michael Pye to police as a potential match to that sketch. And so they start researching Michael Pye. Commander Peterson said, "We started researching him immediately, and we started to learn that he was engaged in a pattern of breaking into homes in St. Paul around 6 in the morning. However, Pye was incarcerated on the day of Heidi Firkus' murder. Authorities had no choice now to clear Michael Pye of any involvement in Heidi's death." A few months after Heidi Firkus' death, Nick meets Rachel Watson. Rachel, who later shares in an interview with ABC News, "I definitely felt sorry for him that he had gone through such a trauma." After a year of dating, in August of 2012, Rachel and Nick get married. The couple, they go on to have 3 children and move into a house that was purchased for them by Nick's parents. Nick and Rachel, they had an arrangement where they would pay the mortgage amount to Nick's parents, and Nick would pay the property taxes directly to the county. Rachel finds a notice in their home that stated that they were delinquent on their property taxes and that their house was in danger of being foreclosed on. Rachel shares that in her mind immediately goes to Heidi Firkus' death. And she shares, "I didn't know that this was happening, and I'm living with this person. I have children with this person. And the last time he had problems with finances, a lot of things went wrong." Rachel, she decides to confront Nick Firkus, and she records the conversations. And in one of those recordings, Rachel says, "The fact that you're lying was so easy for you to do in front of me over and over and over makes me think. He responds, cutting her off, that I could murder my wife. She replies, yes. Rachel and Nick divorced in 2018. In 2019, Sergeant Nicole Sipes of the St. Paul Police Department, she takes a new look at the death of Heidi Firkus. She tells 2020, the case always bothered me because the circumstances didn't seem to fit what happened. Sipes, she reaches out to the FBI to help reconstruct sound data from the 911 call to see if there was evidence of a third person in the house. They find that there is no noise that could be detected at all in the background, using as much professional devices and every little thing they can to prove there is no way that anyone was in the background. The FBI, they also combined their ballistics testing and a virtual model of Heidi and Nick Firkus' house to prove that the shots were most likely not accidental in the middle of a struggle, but deliberately done. Once Sipes learned of Nick Firkus' recent divorce from his second wife, she decides to reach out to Rachel Firkus, who shared her suspicion. Sipes shared that when talking to Rachel even says she could have also been a victim. In May 2021, Nick was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in the death of his former wife. A grand jury later indicted him for first-degree murder, which, as I shared, he has been found guilty of. But the Ramsey County prosecutors, they argued that Nick hid details of their financial troubles from his wife and murdered her due to the shame of their impending eviction. Now, the Ramsey County Assistant District Attorney, Elizabeth Lamine, told 2020 that it wasn't just gonna be the loss of this house, it was gonna be the realization that he had lied to his wife, and he had lied to his friends, he had lied to the community for many years. Robert Richmond, Nick's defense attorney, he refuted these allegations. In addition to the financial evidence, prosecutors also found only Nick had any DNA on this shotgun, and several witnesses testify in court there were no signs of a breakup. Nick's attorney, he claimed the intruder was wearing gloves and only in the home for a couple of seconds, so he couldn't leave DNA evidence. On February 10th of 2023, as I shared, it only took the jury 4 hours to find Nick guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His parents shared in a statement he was wrongfully convicted and sits in jail for a crime he did not commit. This is not just the belief of heartbroken parents. In the court of law, they disagree with that comment. After Heidi graduated from Roseville Area High School in 2003, she started dating Nicholas. A friend recalls Heidi telling her, "Think he's the one." Another friend, Gibbs, shared she was always one who seemed to know what she wanted, and she was very certain about her decision. Gibbs, she was a longtime friend who attended the University of Northwestern in Roseville with Heidi. Nicholas and Heidi, they met at Calvary Church in Roseville, Minnesota, which Heidi attended regularly with her family while growing up. They served as church youth group leaders, and they were married at the church in 2005. At her funeral at Calvary, Nicholas Firkus said, "The best way that I can describe my grief right now is to call it homesickness." That was according to the eulogy he posted on Facebook. "Ever since Heidi and I were married, I realized there were days when I was at work where I just felt homesick, not for my house, but to be where Heidi was." Heidi Firkus' friends even shared they didn't know Nicholas well. Their friendship was primarily with Heidi. And these were a few friends that she had: Bain, Starr, and Gibbs. Now, the Firkuses, they did have a close group of other married couples they often spent a lot of time with. Heidi, she remained devoted to her longtime friends. When Starr and Bane, who went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, came home for breaks, Heidi was the organizing force in getting them all together with other friends. Around Christmas each year, she threw a fondue party, which Bane thinks was a play on the word booyah. She could be goofy and she loved spending time outdoors and watching romantic comedies. That's who she was. She also lived her life with purpose. That's what her friends describe her as. Her friend Starr said, I think her relationships were so close because she made a point to talk about real things. There was not a surface relationship for her in any place in her life. In their last conversations, Firkus called Starr to tell her how much she liked her wedding invitation. In their last conversation, Firkus called Starr to tell her how much she liked her wedding invitation. The day after Heidi was killed, Starr received her RSVP in the mail. If you recall, I shared that Heidi was looking for a dress for a wedding that was coming up. Starr was married in June of 2010 and says that not having Firkus there was devastating. It was the same for Bane at her wedding at the end of 2010. So she had 2 weddings in 2010 and she was looking for a dress, and I believe it was for the fall she was looking for a dress. Justice is finally being served as her killer, who told her to run to the garage with the purpose of shooting her in the back, will spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rest in peace, Heidi. Taken from this world way too soon. That is the story of the murder of Heidi Firkus. Rest in peace, Heidi.